Hello, my name is Tanya and this is my channel Just Let Me Sew. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you are well wherever you are and whatever you are up to. Today I want to share with you a couple of makes that I have finished over the past couple of weeks. Really pleased with these two makes. I think going into 2024 I'm really trying to be much more mindful about the things that I am making sure they are things that I'm going to wear, that I actually need in my wardrobe as well. And I think these two makes are definitely going to fit that bill. The first thing that I want to share is this beautiful top. I shared this on my Instagram and it got a lot of love and I really love it. It is the pattern McCall's M7325. And it's a tunic top. It's got this really interesting bodice feature and the sleeves are really lovely and billowy and they gather into the front bodice panel and also on the back as well as a similar panel piece. And then these two panels which you gather and attach sort of like a skirt. So I will talk to you in a bit of detail about it. So I'll hold it up for you one more time. The colour isn't really showing up that well on here. It looks quite emerald green from what I can see, but it's actually sort of like a mid green. And I have shared this before on my previous vlog, I think, my plans of what I wanted to do. And it came together really well. It is marked as an easy. I wouldn't say it's 100% easy, but I think that's probably just down to McCall's as standard Big Four. Their instructions are quite minimal at some points, a bit of a head scratcher. This is the second time I've made this pattern, so it made more sense to me. But the first time I made it, I definitely did think, I really don't understand what they're trying to say here. So I'll insert a picture of me wearing it. It looks on the packet like it's quite an oversized top. So I made up the size S, which is for, just check my notes, a bust of 31.5 to 32.5. I am a bust 34, and it's a waist on the packet 24 to 25 and my waist is 29. So I made up the size S. The finished garment measurements that I found on there, I can't remember, but it made me think there was going to be enough ease in it. The finished garment actually only really has about a couple of inches ease on it, particularly sort of on this under bust area. It's loose, but it's not like really loose. So be careful if you are going to downsize, just be careful with your measurements, just double check. I wouldn't recommend going down more than one size. So I made it up in a green cotton gingham that I got from Legend Textiles. Legend Textiles, they are based in Norfolk. They've got a website which is just jam-packed with lots and lots of different fabrics, and their prices are unbelievably cheap, really good value. This cotton gingham was £2.50 a metre. It was a narrower width, as gingham does usually tend to be, but I just bought sort of double the quantity that I thought I would need, and even then it was about £5 a metre. So I have mentioned this before in a previous vlog, so if this is a bit boring for you, sorry. I will get onto the actual garment in a minute. There were a couple of snags in the fabric, I will say that, where as with gingham, you can see that it sort of weaves through, you know, you've got the green weaving through the white, etc. And where the new threads, I suppose, are tied in when they make the fabric, there were a couple of snags. So I had to be careful when I was piecing it all together that the snags were on the wrong side, or I just avoided that. There was one point, I can't even remember where it was, where I didn't manage to spot one of those snags, but it's no big deal, it's no problem at all. What else did I want to say? Okay, so I have made this before, as I said. I made it for my sister, and my sister lives up in Scotland, so we weren't really able to toile it or see what it would look like on her. And we discovered when it was finished that this neck slit here is actually quite low. And if you look on the packet, you can sort of see that from the drawings, but the model, it finishes about there, which isn't that low, but on my sister it was sort of quite low, really quite revealing, so she has to wear it with a little vest top underneath. So I raised mine by a couple of inches just to allow for that. I didn't make any other changes to it, that was the only thing I did. I had thought about bringing the neckline in a little bit, but I decided to leave it that little bit more open. So the instructions. I think a lot of people are put off Big Four patterns because some of their instructions are really minimal, and it can make you feel quite despondent when you just can't figure out what they're trying to do, what they mean by it. There is a sew along for this pattern. I had a look at the Minerva one, and I wouldn't say it really sort of addressed the things that I found quite tricky, but what I will say is there were 2 points that I think need to be clarified. First of all is this neck slit. If you've never done a neck slit before, it can be quite difficult to get that V really, really crisp at the bottom. And if you were to follow their instructions, they have you do just a really pointy triangle. You cut into that and then you just fold it out. So if you just fold it out, you are going to get puckering. You might be lucky and really be able to steam that puckering out, but you need to clip a lot more than that. And on some fabrics, particularly like a cotton, which is a bit heavier, you're probably not going to be able to get all that puckering out. So what you should do instead is do, I would say, at least a couple of really small straight stitches right at the bottom of that slit. So you go down one side, pivot your needle, do 2 tiny little stitches, and then go back up. And then when you cut into that, I would stop your cutting maybe a couple of millimeters just before that straight line and do 2 diagonal cuts into the corner where you've done those 2 straight stitches. And that way, when you turn it all into the facing, you should get a much neater finish that lies a lot flatter. And then with a good press, you should be able to get those out. So your finished result will look a bit sort of flatter. It won't have that sharp point, but on a heavier fabric, I think you may struggle to do that. The pattern recommends lighter weight fabrics like cotton, voile, lawn, crepe de chine, sort of quite light fabrics as well. If you are using something like a viscose and you're doing that cut, you would really want to reinforce that slit as well, because those kind of fabrics can fray quite badly. Cotton was quite stable, so I didn't really have to worry about that, but just bear that in mind. Maybe do quite a bit of reinforcing along there, or maybe even add some interfacing on top of it as well to help give that support and structure. Another thing to mention, so they say it's an easy pattern, and it is, like I said, once you've got your head around it, but there is a point on the pattern where these lovely huge billowy sleeves meet this bodice panel and the panel at the bottom as well. So really make sure that you mark on all of the circles, the squares, the notches, everything that the pattern has you do, because you really, really, really need to pay attention to that square. When you are attaching the sleeve and the bodice to that panel, you need to make sure all of your seam allowances are really held back out of the way, because if you accidentally sew over one of the other seam allowances or the fabric, you will get sort of bunching and puckering there. So just make sure you do all of your markings and notchings. You should be okay with that. Other than those 2 things, it comes together really, really easily. And I just think it's beautiful. It's really lovely. I did the shorter version, so I didn't do the full tunic. And I love how it just looks sort of a bit more put together. It's also really comfortable at the same time, which is fantastic. And I just love the fabric. It's worth mentioning, I actually decided to do this pattern after seeing a top that my mum has, which was from Jigsaw. I will try and insert a picture for you here if I have one. Her top is slightly different. It's got a little collar and a V-neck, but I saw it and thought it was just beautiful, and perhaps I had something that I could try and replicate it with. And I think I kind of have. It's a version that I love. So that is my finished tunic blouse top. The next thing I want to talk to you about is an Ilford jacket, and I will grab it for you. So in one of my earlier vlogs, I shared an Ilford jacket that I made up for my husband as a Christmas present, and I made his up in a green cord, and I lined it, or I interlined it with some fleece. I then saw Amelia from Sew Amelia Ellen, had done an Ilford, and she had lined it as well, and I asked her, oh, how did you line it? And she said that she got the tutorial just straight from the Friday Pattern Company website, which I couldn't believe I hadn't even checked beforehand if they had a tutorial on there. So I went over and checked out their tutorial, and it's really, really easy to line it. So first of all, I will show you my finished version. So I made it up in the loveliest, squishiest boiled wool fabric. The light is a bit bright, strangely enough, for this time of year, but it's more of a sort of coral pink. It's looking quite orange on the screen, I think. So it's a lovely corally salmon pink boiled wool. Now, when I bought this from Fabrics Galore, which is in London, it was right at the back of the shop on the bottom shelf in the corner, and it was the colour that drew me in. I think it's a beautiful colour, and it was labelled up just as a boiled wool, which I have never bought before, never sewn with before. So I didn't really know what it should or shouldn't look like, and it wasn't until I actually got it out to sew, to cut out, that I noticed the back of it was slightly different, and it's got a bit of stretch to it. It's like boiled wool, but on the back it has a knit sort of fabric that the wool has been applied to, so it gives it quite a nice bit of stretch. So you can see there it stretches quite a bit in the both directions actually, which is absolutely fine. It's not a problem for sewing up the Ilford jacket, and I suppose it makes it even squishier and comfier as well. So I bought this fabric about 2 years ago, so I really doubt they have it in stock anymore. If they do, I will try and link it down below. Same for the green gingham. Legend Textiles have the green gingham still in stock, so I will link that down below as well. And the Sherpa that I have lined it with was a present from my mum. She picked it up at a fabric shop, I think down in Worthing somewhere. I'll see if she can remember the name of the shop, and again I'll link that. And this Sherpa actually does have stretch to it as well, and it is the softest, snuggliest Sherpa. It's just amazing to wear. The sleeves I didn't line in the Sherpa because it just would have been too bulky, but I used this amazing spotty lining fabric that again I bought about four years ago from Pound Fabrics. It's definitely a lining fabric. It's poly, really silky, slinky. They definitely don't have this in stock anymore, I'm afraid. So that is for the sleeves. And what I did was, for the inside, I wanted to use a label. And I bought this lovely patch from Specky Seamstress, which I think is intended for jackets, probably to go sort of on the back as a big label. But what I quite like in coats is when they have that hidden inside pocket where you can keep perhaps your bank card or some coins. I just find it a little bit safer when you're out and about. You don't want something in your pockets that you might accidentally pull out when you take your hands out of your pockets. So what I did with this pouch was I attached it to the lining before I had attached the lining to the actual jacket, and I zigzagged it down but just kept it open at the top, so it serves as a little pouch. And I've tested it with my bank card and it fits in perfectly there, so I can use that if I'm out and about just to keep my things a little bit safer. So I love that detail. And then I've added a label, which is little rosy cheeks. It says I am unique. And then for my little hook, I had some bias binding that I had made up myself. So I just cut a strip of that, folded the bias binding in half, sewed it down so I had a nice thin strip, and just attached it when I was sewing in the collar. So those are all the details. Oh, actually the buttons are one of my favourite details. In fact, I think I love everything about this jacket, but I really love these buttons. I got these buttons, just done 4, from, I don't know how you pronounce it, Misan or Mysan on Goldhawk Road when I went on a fabric shopping trip with Surrey Sews. And I've just used 4 of them, and I think they match really well with my lining. There's a nice theme to it there, but I really do love sort of spots and animal print and all that kind of stuff. So I like those. The buttonholes. I could not get this fabric through my sewing machine. I did a little practice run where I just took a strip of the Sherpa, sandwiched it in between the fabric and tried to just do a test run. And it wouldn't even do like more than 3 stitches because all of the fluff was getting caught on my buttonhole. I thought I might need a sort of like, what do they call it? Like a jump pump thing to keep the presser foot a little bit more raised. If it was too thick, didn't make any difference. So I did them by hand, and I had been putting off having to do buttonholes by hand. There have been plenty of times when I could have done it by hand because my machine doesn't like that extra thickness. But I've always put it off. So this time I did it. I did a little practice run last night, and then while I was doing the virtual sewing room last night, I sewed all these buttonholes by hand, and I'm really pleased with how they've turned out. They're definitely not the most beautiful buttonholes or the neatest, but they blend in quite well. And it's quite straightforward to do. You can do them where they're sort of bound, but I just did it with 2 threads, doubled up my thread, and then you do, they call it the buttonhole stitch, but I think it's basically like a blanket stitch, isn't it? Where you just stitch all around it. You have to cut your hole first, which is a little bit daunting, and then you just stitch all around it. And at the top and the bottom, you do 2 little stitches to reinforce that opening there. So do them as tight as you want. This is a nice stable knit fabric, so I don't think it's going to be fraying. So yeah, pleased with how those turned out. Anything else I want to say about the Ilford? Oh yeah, one thing I am going to go back and fix is this collar. So where I have got the under collar and the top collar in the same thick fabric, it does make for quite a chunky collar. And when it came to trimming down the collar, the pattern instructions don't tell you to trim that seam allowance there. So I didn't, and I ummed and ahed about whether I should. I graded it a little bit, so I cut down some of the Sherpa, but I have still got, you know, 5/8 of an inch worth of fabric there, and it is stopping the collar from lying completely flat. It's not a big deal, but it does kind of bug me a bit because when I wear it, that is popping up like that. And I have steamed it, and I've got my clapper out, and it's not lying flat. So I think I might go back, unpick the collar, trim down my seam allowance, and then have another go. What I was worried about was that if I trim it too much, I'm going to have quite a stumpy, thick seam allowance there. So I worried if that would be an issue. If you've got any experience with sewing thick collars, let me know down below if that's going to be all right to trim that down. Do you think that would be okay? I just want it to try and lie flat a bit more, and I've steamed it as much as I can, and it's not. So let me know what you think about that. That'd be great. Okay. Oh, another thing I didn't say that I did was for the pockets, I did the hand warmer version. I really like that, to be able to put your hands in. When I did this jacket for my husband, I found the pockets were a little bit too small, so I've added about 1 centimetre to the side and the bottom there, so just be able to get a bit more in. Yeah, so that is my Ilford jacket, and I think I'm going to be getting a lot of wear out of that for sure. Okay, just having a look at my notes. Next thing I wanted to talk about was some of my plans, what I have got in mind at the moment. And this is a bit of a strange one for me. I thought with spring on the way, I would have lots of nice sewing plans in mind, but I actually feel like I've done an involved sew with that Ilford jacket, and I'm kind of just a bit like, oh, I don't really know what I want to make next. If I need to make anything, the only thing I really need is a pair of trousers. I live in one pair of jeans and my new Persephone pants that I made up last month, the navy cord. But they're not quite as versatile because they're sort of a cropped length, so they don't really go with everything. So I do want to make another pair of trousers. So I had thought about making perhaps a longer pair of Persephones, and I saw on Legend Textiles website they have got some dark green cotton canvas, which I think would be good, and the price I had to double check is £1.99 a metre, which seems crazy. Really, really good value. So I think I might do those in a cotton canvas. I've never worked with cotton canvas before, so if you have, does that work for trousers? I think it does. I had a little look online and it seems to be an okay choice for trousers. So that is my only thing that I want to make. When I'll get around to doing those, I don't know, because as I said, I've just made an Ilford and I kind of just want a bit of a breather from making something so involved. You know, you need a palette cleanser, like a t-shirt or just something you know how to do, and it's really easy and straightforward. I might make up another one of the McCall's M7325s that I just shown you, but I don't have any fabric that I would want to make it out of. I think if I make it again, I want to do a white version in maybe like a Swiss dot. I think that would look really pretty. Right, talking of fabrics, I bought some fabric from Rainbow Fabrics when they had their recent remnant sale. Excuse me. Now, what I'm about to say is probably going to be a little bit controversial for some people, because I know a lot of people love Rainbow Fabrics. They have a great variety of prints and fabrics that come through. But recently, I have to say, I've kind of gone off them a little bit. I know, like with everything, the cost of living, prices have gone up a lot. But I have noticed with Rainbow Fabrics, their prices are now sometimes sort of like £10 a metre. When they started, they were a lot cheaper than that, so about £6 a metre for similar fabrics. Normally I wouldn't mind that too much, but what gets me a little bit is that they have no guarantee on the composition of the fabric. Sorry. So I have kind of been put off by that, because I've had a couple of instances where fabric has arrived and it's been stained, or it's had a fault in it somehow, or it hasn't quite been the composition that they said it was. I understand when they're buying from big warehouses, they can't be specific about what the content is of the fabric. But I think as a fabric shop, you probably should know, if that is your bread and butter, you should know what a fabric is. And I'll give you an example. Again, I'm sorry if this sounds really moany. I don't want to sound like I'm sort of being like running down a business, but it's just my honest opinion. I ordered in their remnant sale this fabric that was sold as deep terracotta brushed cotton tencel. So when I think of brushed cotton, I think it's going to be soft, and tencel would have a nice sort of body to it, a nice movement perhaps. And this is what arrived. Sorry. Again, it's coming up quite bright on here. So from here, it does look like deep terracotta, but it's in real life, it's more like a dark brown chestnut colour. So colour aside, fair enough, monitors vary and all of that, but it's not a brushed cotton. There's nothing brushed about it. It's a cotton drill. That's cotton drill to me. I have bought cotton drill before. I've seen it in shops. It's got that thick, heavy body to it. You know, you'd make a pair of trousers out of that, but I would think brushed cotton tencel or brushed cotton, you would make something quite floaty out of it. But that's got like no real drape to it at all. It's very stiff. So I messaged them and said, you know, this really isn't what it was labelled to be. Can I do a return on it, please? A return on it? And they said, yes, you can, but you'll have to pay the postage. So yeah, I get that you have to pay the postage, but I did think like it was nowhere near the description, so I'm a little bit miffed about that. But moan aside, I did get some fabrics in that remnant sale, which I do like and I am pleased with. So this bright pink, which is a poly fabric, sort of like a poly crepe. They put it as a poly viscose, I think. It's just a poly, really. But there is 3 meters there, so I thought that would be fantastic for a dress. I just love that bright pink colour, really pretty. And then I bought some jersey fabric, which they've labelled as a viscose jersey. I think it was labelled as a viscose jersey, and it's on this navy background with these lovely flowers. So I've got their 1.20 meters, so I thought I'd make myself up a t-shirt, short sleeve t-shirt for the summer, perhaps that sort of solar tee, relaxed drop fit with the ruffle. That'd be really pretty. And then I've got one more fabric, which is similar to this one, but it's white with blue flowers coming down it, and that's already gone in the wash, so I will try and find a picture to insert for you there. So yes, I have slipped and I have bought some fabrics, but yeah, sorry about the moan about rainbow fabrics, but that's just sort of bugged me a little bit with them, really. So that is what I've made, some of my plans and my fabrics that I've bought. I just want to finish off by doing one last shout out for the Sew Pads for Uganda 24 campaign that is running. If you search that, I'll put the tag up here. If you search for that on Instagram, you will find it. They are still taking pads for that, and the lovely Helen at Hellcat Michael Sews is doing a UK collection. So if you're based in the UK, you can send these to her, and she's very kindly shipping them over. So they are looking for reusable sanitary towels with wings. They have got a tutorial. Who is running it? Mountain Sewing, I think. Again, I'll put the tag up here for you. The name's just gone out of my head. Sorry, Catherine. And they are also looking for some zipper pouches for the pads to go in. So if you like making zipper pouches, just a little one, they would greatly appreciate that. And also some pads as well. I don't think Helen's got a deadline of when she is going to post them all off, but maybe in the next couple of weeks. That would be fantastic. So I will finish off there. It's been quite a long chat today. I hope you are well and you have got some nice sewing done. If you are sewing for spring, or perhaps if you're in the southern hemisphere, if you are starting to think about autumn, what are you thinking of sewing? What are you getting up to? And I hope to see you next time. If you have enjoyed today's video, please do give me a little like, and I would love to hear from you down in the comments down below. Take care. Happy sewing. Bye.